Welcome to today's episode of our Coates Talent League club by club previews. And today is going to be quite a special one because we'll get to preview Tassie Devils. And to do that with me is Crafted Draft analyst Jonty Ralph-Smith. Jonty, how are you?
Yeah, very good. A bit more excitement about Tassie, I think, this year than what there was last year.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an exciting few years for them if we get to see some strong draft names coming through this year's crop and then in the succeeding years as well. Obviously coming off the back of 2024 when they had no Devils taken in the national intake or the rookie draft. We did get to see Jordy Payne go first overall in the midseason draft, which should bode well, hopefully, for both North Melbourne and potentially Tasmania in the years to come. But from a national standpoint and what was probably put forward from their program, little underwhelming, you'd have to say. And there's going to be a lot of focus on the Devils from not only their junior ranks, but from what they're going to be providing the AFL come 2028 and what the State League can offer. And we're going to see a lot of changes and concessions. But how are you seeing, I guess, the focus on this Tassie group heading into the 2025 Talent League season?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more talent in this group. There were some players that sort of were around the mark last year. Ollie DePolly-Cubank, who's coming back as a 19-year-old, as is Ollie Dean, who was around the mark, and Lenny Douglas. But yeah, none of them were able to probably just take that next step and really command selection in what was a strong draft. But yeah, there's some interesting notes around the Tassie Devils this year. So their State League has been revamped, which will make it interesting from the perspective of the players who are sort of on the fringe of selection for the Devils playing in that state league compared to what the players who don't get selected for the Victorian clubs are playing in, the level that they're going to be exposed to. That's something that the Tassie coaching staff will have to weigh up. The decision for bottom-agers is something that we've sort of heard could be part of Tassie's list concessions. They might get some players available to them following the 2026 season, which would obviously be the bottom-agers this year, and that would see them spend 12 months within the academy before they are then on Tasmania's list. So is that something that players want to do, or do they want to get into the AFL as soon as possible? And then they're not playing as many games as they would usually be playing, and as what the other clubs play, they've taken a few games off, and that's something that's been received really well down in Tassie. I think the consensus for the last few years has been that they play really strong footy, and I think you do see that, and it's obvious to the naked eye that in the first month they're actually one of the stronger clubs, and that's regardless of the ability of the list to produce draftable talent. They play really well as a team through the first month of the season, and that probably just drops off as the season goes on due to fatigue. So the idea that they just play the 12 games in 2024 as well as the finals will hopefully allow them to play a better standard throughout those games and peak for the really important games being the Allies and also the Coates League finals, depending how far they do progress. Just noting that a lot of their players obviously do go to school or work full time, so it can be a bit of a commitment needing to fly in and fly out on the same day is another difficulty that they sort of have to endure. So yeah, some things to note with Tassie, but yeah, they've certainly got some talent to keep an eye on, which we'll go through now.
Yeah, there's certainly some peaked interest in this group, and when we talk about their 2026 and 2027 prospects and what they will potentially be able to offer when expansion nears, but 2025's prospects are going to be quite interesting. Those that aren't taken in the first round will have 2-year contracts, which means that those rookie deals will align or are expected to align with the incoming Tasmanian team as the 19th license for the AFL. So that's going to be quite interesting to see how many get through this year's draft and where they fare in the draft rankings. Obviously, top first round talent is going to be very exciting for them, and as was the case a couple of years ago when we saw Riley Sanders, Colby McKercher, James Leake all get picked up as first round picks, and then Ari Schoenmaker later in the draft as well. So they're hoping for a crop similar to that and even stronger if possible. But I think a nice wide crop might be just as satisfying for them if they can get a whole heap of later guys getting that access to AFL programs a few years out from when the team comes along, and then they'll have to start assessing their list options. But for this year's crop, probably the headline act for them this year, Jasper Hay, a key position talent. We don't get too many out of Tassie, but they have been proven to I guess, birth some of the best key position players the top flight's ever seen. But Jasper Hay is certainly going to be one that is going to have Devils fans excited.
Yeah, he is. He's the only one that's part of the AFL Academy. He played through the ruck and quite raw last year. Played alongside Ollie Dean, and they'll again do that this year. I think what the belief is with Jasper Hay, even though he does stretch the tape at 200 centimeters, is that he is a secondary ruck option at AFL level. So there has been a propensity to show him through other positions in the preseason, and he did it in the under-17s futures game on AFL Grand Final day. He went down back and showed some really nice glimpses there with his ability to not give his forward any room. So I think we'll see him start the season down back, is what the word is. And then Ollie Dean will play through the ruck as that sort of raw developing 19-year-old. He'll hopefully put his name on mid-season draft radars, might play for the young guns if all works out. And they've got Ewan Dillon that will run through the ruck as well as a bottom-ager. So they've got some nice tools this year. But yeah, in terms of Jasper Hay, I think we'll see him down back, and we might even see him up forward a little bit and also through the ruck, just noting how strong the Allies 2025 key position talent is. They want to make sure he's as versatile as possible, so he is getting a game, because there's going to be a lot of competition for spots. But yeah, he's one to keep an eye on for Tassie fans, and play teams who do need key position talent.
You mentioned Ollie Dean, and there are a pretty strong crop of overage players who will come back and feature for the Tassie. So Nathaniel Salzberg is one who we saw with the Sandy Dragons and with Tassie, and he'll feature a little bit for North Melbourne's VFL program this year. So he's one that we'll look at as a mid-season draft prospect. Who else from the Devils could be in that overage bracket that will be trying to make their case again in 2025?
Yes, they've also got Ollie Tapoli-Cubank and Max Roney returning. Ollie Tapoli-Cubank, I think if you just watched the national championships last year, you'd think he was a little bit unlucky to get overlooked in the draft. I don't think he even got a state combine invite in the end. But he probably just trailed off a little bit towards the end of the year. He might have been one that was a victim of that fatiguing that we do often see with Tasmanian players. But yeah, as a really good running high half forward, he's got some really likable attributes, got a bit of X factor as well. I think he's probably one that's just going to build his contested game a little bit this year, and they'll showcase him through the midfield, and he's put on size in the off-season as well. So look for him to have an impact around the midfield. Max Roney had good utility value last year. Expect him to, again, show off his versatility. He's listed at Casey VFL this year. So I think the belief is that if he doesn't get listed at an AFL club in the mid-season draft, he'll come up to the Demons to play some VFL footy. And they're obviously coached by a Tasmanian in Taylor Whitford, so there's a good little connection there. Oscar Van Dam was going to do that last year and then ultimately decided to stay in Tassie and played for them as an overager. And like you said, Nathaniel Sulzberger, really exciting to see what he can produce in 2025. Quite unlucky to get overlooked, arguably, after a really strong preseason and start to 2025. But yeah, the depth of midfielders probably just saw him squeezed out. Hopefully he's playing more footy for North VFL, because he is a strong-bodied sort of player. And I think if he does play at the Coates League level, he will dominate, because he has got that strength and power. But if he does play for Tassie, look for him to have a real impact around stoppage and overhead.
Few others just to mention. So we've got Lucas Wooten, Riley McHenry, Rudy Schoenmaker, the latter being a familiar surname after we saw Ari drafted a couple of years ago. What do you make of those three and their cases this year?
Yeah, Lucas Wooten's one who'll push for increased midfield time in 2025. He played as a rebounding defender, probably played his best footy there last year for Tassie, and that's probably where he plays his footy if he plays for the Allies, just given the strength of that midfield for the Allies. But yeah, he's a really good kick. He's quite good around stoppage, and he's had a good preseason. His speed's really strong, but now he's put on and combined that with some strength as well. So he'll be hard to stop, and I expect him to sort of be that 25 disposal per game player for Tassie and be the leader of that midfield group. And then Riley McHenry as well can play a little bit everywhere. Expect to see him around stoppage a little bit, and he can impact in the front half. But yeah, he's hardworking and competitive, and his endurance is quite strong as well. And you mentioned Rudy Schoenmaker. Yeah, he's a really good story. He turned up to a Tasmanian training session and in pre-season just really impressed them with what he was able to do. Has made his way onto the list as a result of that. So I think he came from a fair way back for the Devils in the Talent Pathway program. But yeah, as a tall utility, he's the brother of Ari Schoenmaker at the Saints, who will be looking to play some AFL footy this year. Rudy Schoenmaker could burst onto the scene in the Talent League, but he's one to just name check, because he's one who, uses the ball well and has some height.
And as we mentioned throughout the show, the I guess, succeeding years and their prospects for 2026 and 2027 are going to be of greater focus as each year goes on and the expansion gets closer. Who are some of the bottom age prospects the Devils have for 2025 that fans should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think there's a belief that Tassie's bottom age contingent is probably stronger than its top age contingent, and they could have a fair few drafted in 2026. Charlie Bovell probably leads to that. He's a key position swingman. The word is he's going to start down back for the Tassie Devils. That's possibly where he'll end up playing his best footy and probably where he's best suited at the moment, just with the litany of tools they've got on their list. But he will have a delayed start to the season, just with a little bit of a stress reaction that they had to monitor throughout pre-season. Then they've also got Jacob Stretton, who didn't necessarily play strong footy throughout the under-16s national championships as much of some of his teammates, but that's because he was playing through injury. So he's fit as a fiddle now. He ran a 5:52 2-kilometre time trial, which was a Tasmania Devils record, and he's really strong as well. So look for him on the wing to work hard defensively and offensively and get involved with their ball use in transition. And then, a few others as well. I talked about Ewan Dillon. We'll go through the ruck. Ryder Bug, Hugh McCullum, and Archie Devine are all players around stoppage who could see some midfield minutes and, have their own strengths as sort of midfielders or sort of half-back, half-forward flankers.
Oh, it's a great wrap-up of Tassie. It's certainly exciting time for the Devils and their locals. Jonty, thanks for covering that for us today.
No worries. Looking forward to watching them in 2025.
Yeah, their season gets started in the season opener against Bendigo on March 29, hoping to improve on that 5th place finish from last year. And for the rest of our Coates Talent League Club by Club previews, you can head to zerohanger.com and the YouTube page as well, and we'll cover you on all of our latest draft news and analysis.